Hi everybody, my name is Alan. On behalf of the whole crew here, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. You know, for those of you who've watched the show before, know that really one of the main focuses of the show, generally speaking, is in some way, shape, or form that we talk about and we talk to people whose lives are dedicated to really healing the human heart. That with everything that goes on this planet, there is something that's the root cause of all the seeming disharmony, of all the places where fear and hatred and war and poverty and just the things that we do to each other as human beings, the things we do to the land, to the earth, to the dolphins and the whales and the trees and all the ways that the disharmony manifests. There is a root cause, and in a way it's the broken heart. The heart that doesn't recognize the connection between us all, that doesn't recognize, as we talk about, the oneness. That love that's at the root of this human life and of life itself. And you know what the Bridging Heaven and Earth show is about is to put out a vibration of love so strong and so consistently, in a way we talk about so unrelentingly, that the heart will be healed. It'll be healed by that vibration of love. And you know, the people who come on the show as guests come from all over the world, and their lives day in and day out passionately and vibrantly and diligently and just incredibly, minute by minute, are to heal the heart, are to bring that love into their own lives more and more, and then to share it with the rest of the world. And tonight, again, we have people with us whose lives are dedicated to that and who do it with a simple grace and a simple passion. And the power of their work, their play, their dedication is just inspiring to us at Bridging, and I'm sure after you get a chance to hear their story and see their videos and see what they do, you too will be inspired, and all of us need to take that more into our lives. So we have people who started this organization called Everyday Gandhis. They work at it, they started it, they founded it. Cynthia Travis was the founder and president of Everyday Gandhis. And their work is to bring the knowledge and dramatize the simple human experience of people in a way fighting for peace, giving their lives for peace, doing it in an incredibly simple and powerful way. And that's how the name Everyday Gandhis, to do the work of Gandhi every day, day in and day out, to put yourself in places where conflict and war and fear and all those things, to just put themselves in that place and to change it into love, to heal the heart of those high conflict areas, you know, where peace building and peacemaking are just, in a way, out of practice. And the amazing stories they tell of the simple, everyday Gandhis is truly powerful. And we also have with us William Saa, who's the peace builder in residence at Everyday Gandhis. And he's the West African program coordinator. And he's trying through every effort in his life to revive the indigenous cultures and to bring that culture of connectedness back in and back in front, back real. And the work that they do to do that is just an extraordinary thing to see. And so they're with us tonight, and they brought with them two beautiful videos of the Everyday Gandhis that show their work, especially in Africa and Liberia, about how people have come together, simple people in their everyday lives who say no more. We've got to come back to love. And it's incredibly inspiring. So let's have a short meditation, then we'll have the video, and then we'll have Bill and Cyndi with us from Everyday Gandhi. So please join me in a short meditation, and then we'll have the video, and then they'll be with us. Just a minute. Thank you. Thank you. So the first video we're going to see is a piece done by the Everyday Gandhis, and it's their work in Liberia. And this is, to just give you a little background, this is after 14 years of just a brutal civil war in Liberia, that just peace is just starting to take hold. And it's a documentary and a joyous collaboration between the Everyday Gandhi people and the West African Network for Peace Building, and many of the indigenous tribes and people there. So it's just settle in, just watch the video. When you come back, Bill and Cyndi will be with us, and it's an opportunity again to open the heart. So please, here it comes.
In April 2003, after 14 years of a very devastating civil war in Liberia, the women said, enough is enough. 12 women in Liberia came together and started to discuss about the possibility of finding ways towards peace. All of a sudden, that number increased to 500 and more. With bullets flying all over, these women came out. They began to gather and say they wanted peace. They were sitting in the streets before the warlords. They were going without food and water for days, and they continuously protested non-violently until the warlords settled in for a peace meeting in Ghana. These women, they remain a visible force in the Liberia peace process. They are now supporting voters' education in the country, and they are ensuring with the warlords that the agreements from the peace meeting are kept, and they are working hard to see that elections are held in Liberia in October 2005. Before the war, this was a very beautiful part of Monrovia. You had very quiet, nice community life, and you had very decent buildings. You had very structured blocks. On your left is what they call the St. Peter's Lutheran Church. That church, that is the church in which they massacred several hundred Liberians in a second. When the war came, they killed so many people in this church compound, and it's well known for that. All the people that were sacrificed were seeking refuge in the church compound, so they met their end there, seeking refuge. They had no other place to go. That was the last resort, and they came and got rid of them. They thought by being in the church compound they would be spared. These were very beautiful buildings before the war. Very beautiful, sophisticated. But everything is now disrupted. This is the Provident Island down there. That was where the slaves first came and settled, the returning slaves from America. And they began to take hold of the coastal land, because this was the whole coastal area. And that's how Monrovia became the seat of everything, because that's where the returning slaves settled. That's where they developed fully. Unless we think about decentralizing, people will always want to conglomerate into Monrovia, and the more people fill in here, Monrovia cannot absorb everybody. There will be frustrations, and once these frustrations are there, there will be conflicts amongst the people. That's where we find ourselves.
Welcome back, everybody. So that was some video, huh? So we're on the set with Bill and Cyndi. So Cyndi, it was your brainchild at one point. I know a lot of people have come aboard. So, I mean, what made you? I mean, this
the feeling of everyday Gandhis, I mean, was kind of like hovering in the air, and you like grabbed it. What made you grab that, and what led you to that?
It really came out of my own sense of despair that the mainstream media and everywhere I looked seemed to be saturated with images and stories of violence. And I was walking around carrying fear and doubt, feeling powerless and hopeless. And when I first heard stories of people working behind the scenes in violent parts of the world, it was a big shock for me. Even though at the time I was a mediator, I was a conflict resolution professional. This was in 1999. And I realized that all of the places that were in the headlines as having intractable violence were in fact places where countless numbers of people, like you and me, like people in the audience, just normal, ordinary, everyday people, were working full-time to create peace and bring healing and reconciliation and hope to their communities across lines of division and hatred. And I felt so lifted up and so hopeful and so happy and delighted to know this, that I uttered the fateful words, "We should make a film about this." And so we began thinking about how to share the stories of hope and peace, even and maybe especially from the places that we think of as being hopeless and difficult. And I thought maybe if that increased hope in my heart, then it would do the same for others too. And that the stories could not only heal and uplift us, but could make us remember our connection to each other.
Well, and how did you get involved, Bill?
I think for me, one of the challenges we have to think about the world as a whole right now is to begin to respond to the question, when do we feel pain and suffering? And personally, I have drawn my passion from doing this work through a direct contact with pain and suffering. Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier about Liberia and the war in Liberia, 14 years of civil war, very devastating, very tormenting, very, very brutal civil war, in which several people have been killed, in which several people have been displaced all over.
I mean, when you say several, you mean millions.
I'm talking about, of course, the population in Liberia is just a tiny million, it's just about 2.5 to 3 million before the war. But statistics is about like close to 500,000 persons that have been killed during the war.
It's a big percentage.
And you have 1 million more that have been displaced.
Wow.
I personally, and I was thinking today, can I call myself a victim, or shall I call myself a victor? Because I was personally involved in the war. I mean, I was in the war situation. I was caught up in the war situation.
Could anybody have lived in Liberia during those years and not been?
It was hardly not possible, one way or the other, because every part of the country was engulfed in war. And I was caught up in a part of the war where I know that there has been so much suffering all over, but like when rebels are coming in, they call it, to capture like the seat of government, I was like in the capital city, and that was the end point that they were coming to reach, and they wouldn't succeed for months. And I was living in that vicinity, so you can imagine how much bullets and killings and everything. It was like every minute somebody's dying. You're talking with a friend, he's dead the next minute. And you're thinking with yourself, am I the next one? And you're going without food and water for several weeks. You're not eating anything. You know, I drank tea, that was what I had for months. And I drank tea with very little possibilities of finding food to eat for several months. And I lost the taste of sugar. In the midst of all of this, my relatives were being killed in the war. My brother was brutally slaughtered during this time. And I mean, just everything is out of control. And the big question you have out of all of this is, when you go through such an experience, what are you going to do? Are you going to pay back? And what are the consequences for paying back? Are you going to forgive? What are the consequences for forgiving? So these are issues that we as individuals need to work around. But I can only say that all the experience that I went through, that experience that I just explained, is what has given me the passion to work for peace. Is what has given me the formula to say pain and suffering equals love in return. And that's how I started looking more deeply into working for peace, understanding that not only the pain that has been inflicted on me, but that even those who have inflicted pain on me are themselves experiencing pain. So we find ourselves in a whole environment of pain and suffering. And therefore we need to find a way by which we can engage each other so that we get out of that situation. And it's not a lose-or-lose or a kind of win-or-loser situation, but where we find it like a win-win situation and find ways to move.
When you were going through this process, did you go through where revenge seemed more real to you and hate than forgiveness and love?
Of course, when I first thought about particularly my brother's death, who was slaughtered into pieces. And I was thinking, who would have done this to my brother? And what shall I do? It's not the hunger I experienced, but his loss was so severe for me. And I was saying, I'm going to seek out for those who did it, and I will pay back. But you see, in the process, I was able to reflect, and I had some experience prior, and that's where I am saying to myself, how can we reach out?
So was it a process, or just in one moment you realized like there was no revenge that could ever work, and just you'd be spreading more and more hate?
I can say it was a process because I realized that one of it was that in paying back, I was also going to be committing an atrocity. I come from a faith and belief that says our judgment is based not on if you were told you are not supposed to kill, and you kill, and you're killing with the basis that you're coming to find an excuse to say, I killed because somebody killed my brother. I thought that the judgment was not based on that. It was the rule that was saying, don't kill. That if you are hurt, pass it on and carry on with life. Try to prevent further hurts because you understand what pain means. And I think that's one of the challenges. How many people understand what pain and suffering actually is? I understood that. So I know what it meant, like inflicting pain on somebody else.
Well,
but I also knew that by inflicting pain on someone else, I was also getting myself involved in a vicious cycle where somebody would begin to target me. Because
that's the
so
nature
I saw
of
that
it.
kind of
Right.
cycle, and I said,
Right.
how can I work for this? And that's where the whole concept about love is not just so easy. It's a hard pill to swallow.
You mean humans haven't gotten this love thing down
We have.
quite
I
yet?
don't think we have got that
Not
so
quite
much.
just
we
yet.
haven't quite. We try.
We're working on it.
We're trying, and we see love as a very sweet word, but and think it just works. It takes a lot of pain and suffering to produce love.
Uh-huh.
Well, there might be other ways, but that could be
Yeah,
one way.
that's one way from my end.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and how did you and Cyndi decide that, you know, your goals could work together and be part of, you know, the everyday Gandhi thing? When did, you know, the actual, oh, this is a beautiful way to participate in bringing about that peace?
That is the fascinating point. I think that keeps Cyndi and I working closely. Because for me, I'll put it like this. Here is Bill Saa, who has gone through so much pain and suffering and has tried to look the other way around and engaging even those who victimized him and saying, let's move on because we cherish peace. And therefore, the way to really find the peace is to look into what has happened, find ways to reconcile that, understanding the causes, and that's where people get locked up sometimes, but understanding the causes, finding ways to reconcile that, and moving ahead with life. So now you have these kinds of William Saas coming out of the war in Liberia. And you have, on the other hand, the Cynthia Travis, who is being drawn into thinking, oh, there is so much pain and suffering going on in other parts of the world. But again, it's inspiring to me to see that even those who go through severe pain and suffering, they become a source of inspiration. So I'm going to go after such people, and I'm going to work along with them so that they know that they're not alone in this process, and they know that there are people who understand that they've gone through pain and suffering, but there are also people who come along and say, yes, there's hope ahead. Let's move on, even
There's
though we've
more
gone
of
through.
you than just one.
There's
There are
more of me.
A lot of
There's
you.
more of me, and
Yeah.
that's the purpose that everyday Gandhis exist. Trying to find the William Saas, encouraging them, and through encouraging the William Saas will further encourage other victims to see them as model. And if victims would say, if William Saa can come out of this, and he's speaking to me, then I think I can draw from him and see how he came out of it, and maybe I can move on. And in that way, you see that we begin to produce a community again that comes out of pain and suffering, but that also begins to know, learn, and live what you call love.
Wow. And he was afraid he wouldn't have anything to say. So that's great. So when you first started, I mean, you took cameras and you decided you were going to document and tell the stories of different people. You went in there to find a few, and you ended up finding hundreds, right? Why don't you talk about that?
The question began to burn inside in my heart. What is the story of peace? We talk a lot about peace. You read in the headlines, a treaty is signed, a treaty falls apart, there's another attack, the attack stops. What does peace look like on a day-to-day basis? And as I began hearing more stories of peace builders, my attention was drawn to West Africa in particular. And as you know, Liberia was settled by freed slaves. People saw in the video that returning slaves from this country went back and in turn brutalized the indigenous people that they found in West Africa, who were
Brutalization,
yes.
one of the
So we
human-
know that it's passed on
Right.
all too easily. So this question, what is the story of peace? Who's making peace?
How do you break the cycle?
How do you break the cycle? And I learned that in West Africa, some extraordinary people, colleagues of Bill's, had the idea that all of the people working for peace in West Africa could coordinate with each other. And they created the West Africa Network for Peace Building, which now has over 400 organizations and NGOs and I don't know how many, countless individuals. And they're tackling the most difficult situations in a way which links all of them. And there's nobody else in the world doing that yet. So here's a multiplier effect. And in West Africa, I heard the story, it was Sam, the story of Sam's work with child soldiers, children who had been abducted, brutalized, them beaten and drugged and forced to kill their families and to, out of their trauma, to become loyal to mindless killers who just sent them as cannon fodder to kill others. And some of these children, so young and so little that they struggled to carry their guns, forced marches, you name it, the worst possible situation for children. And so as a mother, as a former teacher, it broke my heart. But it broke it in a new way to hear Sam's story, because he was going into the communities and he was helping those children return and helping to use traditional ceremonies and cleansing herbs to bring those children back and to help the community accept them back. And I decided that this story said everything that needed to be said about peace, and was one that we could all perhaps think about joining in some way right here in the States, wherever we would find ourselves. And so by going deeper into the story in West Africa, I found that there was even more going on there than I had realized. And I began to see that it was impossible for me to be able to tell all of those stories, or to tell even one story well, because it was overwhelming. I didn't have enough information, and who was I to tell their story? And in fact, who is anybody to tell somebody else's story? It's kind of a colonial act in its way, especially in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about just creating like a pedestal, a forum, and let people tell their story.
Let people tell their stories. So we ended up finding a way to equip and train and support the formation of 5 peace media production teams in West Africa. The camera people and the producers are people who are themselves refugees or victims of violence, and of course they're doing a gorgeous job.
That's fantastic. Yeah, why don't we see the second half of that video, that documentary, and then we'll come back. So we're going to have the second half of the Everyday Gandhi video about the peace builders in Liberia, and we'll be back with Bill and Cyndi. So here it is.
Vanjama, once a thriving large city in northern Liberia, became a rebel stronghold and suffered some of the worst violence of the war. During the Liberian Civil War, over 1 million people were displaced and 350,000 killed. Some were buried, some without graves. Many deaths have not been mourned. Liberians recognize that traditional ways are key to restoring peace. For the first time since 1991, the people of Wanyama have come together to mourn and reconcile in the old ways. These traditional ceremonies are the cornerstone of community life in Liberia, a sacred link to their ancestors that unifies the living. In Vanyamai alone, over 10,000 former fighters have laid down their arms to the UN peacekeeping force in Liberia.
I believe that the war can just confuse everybody to do something that you're not supposed to do.
All I have to say to the parent of the children to come back home is what we say, let bagger be bagger. Let them forget about whatsoever happened. Because my belief is some of these children, they do this, they don't mean it to do it. But they do it on a condition. They're not all the children that today they are calling them ex-combatant, that they plan to be ex-combatant. But under the condition, the person must be forced. If they are being forced to be in that group, and today God has blessed us that we are coming out of that hot water, we accepted them, we told the mother and the father to forget about them and accept them, talk to them that they can be good human beings for them. That tomorrow when they die, they get somebody to bury them.
Liberia is our country. We have 16 tribes. We are all interrelated. We are all interrelated. Do not go against one tribe, because this is why here is very bad. Do not go against one religion. Muslim is a religion in Liberia. Christianity is a religion in Liberia. We can't continue to live like this. If we are to live in peace, we got to erase that. Are we getting it clear? Yeah. If we are to live in peace, we got to erase that.
Oh, girl, that's a no find you a kizu, every boy ever. Safurima, finding Namu, a would take our money name, got two, as well about Ziva, about Quick.
Thank you. Thank you for this building.
Hands up.
What's up?
Together we stand.
Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
What shall we do? Cynthia. What shall we do? What shall we do? Cynthia. What shall we do? Oh, Toddy. What shall we do? Cynthia. What shall we do? Yeah, Toddy. What shall we do? Cynthia. What shall we do? Gina Rwanda say kurera rufumu mawoko. Gina Rwanda say kuchengeta rufumu mawoko. Vaja babata pamoreri pasina rarambo. patumbuka pamuriri pasina raramo. Yeah, Todi, what shall we do? Cynthia, what shall we do? Oh, Todi, what shall we do?
Hi, we're back on the set with the Everyday Gandhis, Bill and Cyndi. So what kind of programs are going on to bring that forgiveness, that, to spread that, to take where there was, clearly a desire on some level for revenge and to change it into love and collaboration, and either one?
I think during these years that I said I've been trying to work for peace, a certain revelation occurred to me, and that was taking it again on the basis of love. And I think it was to respond to the question, how do we take love to those that we say we want to help, or those that we want to help support peace? So I saw that many years I worked after I came out of my own shells and wanted to work with others. I was taking it to them the other way around. I was saying, now I'm the victor, you are the victim, so I'm here to work with you on that basis. But I suddenly realized that it doesn't work that way. So during our time in reflection, Cyndi and I now, we have been trying to rather respond to the question, which way is it supposed to work? And how could that tell the story of how peace can be built? And suddenly we realized that taking love to build peace means getting the people involved, utilizing their potentials. Each one who is a victim himself is a healer. How can we tap on these potentials in who we refer to as victims? I prefer to call it victors now. But how can we tap on that potential, and how can that potential all of a sudden develop a community potential for healing? And that is where we find ourselves moving right now at Everyday Gandhis.
And what tools and what techniques and what means are you using to bring that into reality, into fruition?
We find ourselves knowing less and less about how to make a plan that is the right plan. And we learn through hard experience by over-planning. And finding that mystery and magic and surprise were very good teachers, although we're not perhaps very good students. When we first went to do our training with the peace media teams,
this is in Africa.
We were in Ghana in January of 2004, and we found ourselves with a few extra days. It's a very strange phenomenon. Bill said he was going back home to Liberia for 3 days. He needed that time to see family and to do a little bit of work that he had pending there. And even though I'm older than he is, I very often act like his little sister, and I ask if I can tag along. So I said, "You can't go without me." Now, I had forgotten when I spoke those words that the night before I left on the trip, my daughter, who's 20, called from college to wish me well and wish me a safe journey, and said, "But Mommy, I knew you were going to Ghana, but I didn't know you were going to Liberia." And I said, "I'm not going to Liberia."
Wow.
She said,
she should be a guest on the show. She's psychic.
I had emailed my itinerary to her.
And it had Liberia on it?
It had Liberia on
and
it.
It was somehow.
I had not even made an inquiry into
That's funny.
the
So you were
possibility.
supposed to go to Liberia, in other words.
I didn't.
Unknowingly.
When I just told you we're not very quick learners,
Right.
that's exactly what I mean.
Right. Yeah,
It never crossed my mind. So we jumped at the chance. Another staff person and I were tagging along with Bill, poor Bill. And the night before we left Ghana for Monrovia, I had a strange dream. And so we're on the plane on our way, and I said, I have this very strange dream, Bill. I didn't know that he was worrying whether or not it was even a good idea for us to go. Was it safe? Did it make sense? It was very volatile.
We had only gone to Ghana, actually, for the training, and I had just joined her here at Everyday Gandhis, and I'm saying to myself, what if we go to Liberia and anything happens to Cyndi and Craig? I will really feel guilty about that. So I was trying to, in a way, protect them.
Right.
But anyway, she can continue with it.
Right.
Yeah. But we didn't know any of this.
Right.
So
once she gets an idea, that I don't think it'd be that easy to stop her anyhow. So I would say you
Maybe
were
not.
probably out manned or something at that time.
Well, there we were.
Right.
And so the dream is very brief. It starts where Bill and Craig and I, Craig is our videographer and trainer. We're in an underground, sort of a cavern on the banks of a river. On the other side of the river, this is the dream. On the other side of the river is a colleague of ours, one of the people on the video teams. He's a Liberian refugee living in Ghana. His name is Roosevelt. Roosevelt's standing on the other side of the river, and he's holding a staff, which is a shaft of light. And behind him are two burning towers.
Wow.
And next to him, on the riverbank, are 3 suitcases. And I look at the suitcases, and they become 3 coffins. And I look at the coffins, and they become 3 small wooden boats. And Roosevelt looks at us and says, everything is ready. And this is the dream.
Wow.
So, of course, Bill's very nervous. He hears coffins.
Right,
Oh, my God.
Did it turn into something quickly?
Of course, we are on the flight. We are on the flight going to Liberia, and she's explaining this dream. And I know that landing into Liberia is a river, and I imagine it's the plane going to crash. And here are 3 of us, and you talking about 3 coffins.
Yeah. Boy, there's a synchronistic number. Uh-oh.
So we...
Obviously, it didn't turn out that way.
It didn't turn out that way.
Right, so
that's what
we made the trip.
Right.
That some of the footage was in the video that you showed. And to make a long story short, we spent then the next several months thinking about that dream and several other dreams that began to come to Bill, to me, and to others in our circle, in our community, both in Liberia and here in the States. We've been experimenting with the idea that in the old traditional ways, dreams are understood to come to an individual on behalf of the community. And it isn't so much about an individual's psychological state. Mm-hmm. It's more about helping to guide the community and shape an understanding of what might be happening. So we began to pay attention to dreams. We began to hear that the women of Liberia had dreamed that the war would come before it happened. We began to have several other dreams. The second important one that came at about that same time was a dream that I also had where I saw a battlefield and I saw a circle of women come and surround the soldiers, and each woman went to a fallen soldier and began singing and mourning and keening and gathered the body of that dead young man and preparing it for burial and weeping and mourning over it. And I woke up sobbing. And we began talking and more talking, and Bill said, you know, in Liberia, before the war, when someone died, we would send that person across the river to their rest with drumming and dancing and singing. And this was a custom that all people of Liberia, regardless of what religion they followed, understood and did when there was a death. And it was a time when the community came together to reconcile, to let bygones be bygones, to put their conflicts to rest, and then eat from a common bowl to seal an oath of reconciliation.
And obviously during wartime, and that was not
Exactly.
a custom that was followed too rigorously.
So as a result, there are 300, 400, maybe 500,000 people in Liberia alone who have never been buried or mourned. And if we begin multiplying that by all of the unmourned, unburied dead from the world's conflicts, we begin to see.
And the feeling is that's like an incomplete octave, and until almost that octave gets completed, it's going to be hard to resolve into that forgiveness.
Because
into
the bitterness
because
and
the hunger
is still
is
there.
just so there. It's not released in any way.
Mm-hmm.
I think Cyndi will continue from there, but what was more revealing is, again, I had worked with so many communities in Liberia before all of this is coming up, and of course I could see that the work we're doing at that level was making impact, taking it to the people, bringing like 3, 4, 5, 30 persons in a workshop setting, discussing trauma issues and all of that. But all of a sudden it clicked to me that something more needed to happen. How would the whole community receive healing? And as this dream is coming up and we're thinking about what the past was, how it brought the community together, and I'm asking myself, could this be the next way forward? And that's where we're moving to now. Continue.
I just want to say one more small piece, and then please take it from there. So we began to ask people in Liberia, might this be helpful? Might this be something people wanted? And there was a tremendous response.
To go back to the rituals of burial, even if the body's not there, but some closure on that losing a loved one.
And the reconciliation process that went with that. And these were called mourning feasts. And was this something to be contemplated? And the response was tremendous. So last November, we took a small group of people. We took our camera teams, and we went. Prior to going, we, of course, were asking ourselves, what the hell are we doing? How will it work? Is it safe? Is it a good idea? How do we prepare the community?
Right.
What are we thinking? And so we had already begun with people in the community. We chose a community that is in the border region close to Guinea and Sierra Leone in the northwest of Liberia, the one in the video. And the traditional healer that we were working with called on a cell phone one day to say she had had a dream.
Wow.
That she was to call together certain people, certain elders from the different sectors of this town, Voinjama, and that together they were to go prepare the community. So of course that's what we did, and it was quite extraordinary and actually transformed the community beyond anything that we could ever have planned with all of our professional experience and expertise. So I think, and then we went back in March, and I think, we can begin now to talk about some of the changes in the community as a result, and some of the hope that we see in reviving the traditional ways.
So if you were to have to say in God's world that, the best laid plans are off go awry, that, that would be like a next thrust to begin to spread the indigenous grieving, the indigenous funeral period, in a community way?
I think that's our vision right now, to put it just like that. We have started in Liberia doing this, and like Cyndi said, it's overwhelming for all of us in a way, because the results that are coming are so clear on the walls, how peace can be created, especially in communities that need healing, and also communities that understand ways that healing can come, but have been shattered because of war. And all they need, it's like a reawakening. And all that we have done at Everyday Gandhis is to reawaken those communities. And the communities themselves are so involved now, the members. Here's how it went. We left from here and went to Liberia with the interpretation of the dreams in dimension and my own understanding about what it meant before the war. And we went, after all the preparations, we went into a town called Wanyama in northern Liberia, where we decided to begin this whole traditional peacemaking efforts. And we managed to prepare the community, and the entire people of Wanyama came together. And what did we have to do? We have always guided ourselves. And that's a challenge also that we need to look at in peace building. How can we support this cause? But how can we not make the mistake of taking ownership for what we're doing? And how can we not make the mistake of getting overly involved in doing this cause, since it, in fact, is a community-based thing that belongs to the people?
It's tricky, isn't it?
It's quite tricky. It's quite challenging.
Right.
It's always you have to check yourself and see where you are at and how you know where you belong.
Minute by minute consciousness.
So now we have the people in Wanyama who we brought together with what? A cow.
A cow.
To make a sacrifice. That's the belief in.
Wow.
And out of that cow sacrifice, the whole of the people in Wanyama came together. When we left from Wanyama and went back recently, they said to us, what you have come to do is what we believe in. We know this brings about healing, and they had lots of discussions. But they said to us, it's not Wanyama, which is the capital of that whole sector. But now what you have done to us is you reawaken our consciousness, knowing that this is what brings peace for us. And now we're going to go back into our various towns and villages to carry on with what this process requires, do the necessary cleansing with the land, with the ancestors, for all the atrocities and whatever part we had in the war. And when that is done, we hold our ceremonies at that level of the community, and eventually we will come back here in Wanyama to commemorate a bigger ceremony that knows that in the back of us we are cleansed and there is purity. So we are so amazed with just how to think about supporting peace building, how to create peace, and how this dream that Cyndi mentioned, but how we interpreted it and how it's giving meaning to a community that has been so shattered. But now the people are coming together. People that haven't been working together before, even before the war, had differences. This ceremony has enabled them to come back together, to discuss their differences, to mourn the dead that occurred during the deaths that occurred during the war in that community, to cross them the river, and through the discussions,
we've crossed the river of the show. We got about
through the discussions, the conflicts that they have been sharing amongst themselves have all gone with that.
We're getting out, so again, it's an opportunity. You heard an incredible story. We love you. God bless you. Let's bring peace. We love you. Good night.